Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. It is the start of December. We are officially 6 weeks through the 25-26 NBA season. I've recapped my MVP race to this point of the year. You can go and check that out in my other video, which I uploaded around 24 to 48 hours ago. Go and check that out. That will cover who I think is dominating this league and who deserves a shout out in this league so far. But week 6 is starting to make things a little bit more interesting. We're seeing some teams return to form with some injured players returning. We're also seeing some other teams just continue to fall off. Some others who have steadied nicely, and they're starting to hit the mark thereabouts where we thought they would be. Is it the be all and end all? Well, that's not for me to decide, but it's certainly looking a little more positive than in previous weeks. So let's get into it. Let's get into my week 6 review for the 25-26 NBA season. We will start in the East, as always, with the Atlanta Hawks, who still remain well above 500, a 13-7 overall record, 2-2 in the week just gone, currently sitting 7th in the conference, and of course led by their breakout star, Jalen Johnson. He's been threatening to do this for the last 6 months, and he just continues to do it in the absence of Trae Young. 4 games played, 26.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, 8.3 assists, a steal and 0.8 blocks on 4.5 turnovers. Shot 45.6% from the field, 40.7% from deep, and 76.7% from the free throw line. And here's a guy who is putting up an all-NBA level season. For me, he's currently all-NBA second team. He's proving to be one of the most valuable commodities in the Eastern Conference, and he is comfortably in my top 10 MVP race. Again, you can go and catch that. I uploaded that a little earlier in the week. It's going to be interesting to see how they continue to convert defensively here. Atlanta, they do have some nice pieces, as I mentioned. Someone like Gilgeous-Alexander has really kicked up his offensive game. Dyson Daniels still really trying to apply himself defensively, and you are getting those minutes out of Porzingis where you need them. Tightening of things would certainly make it a little better for Atlanta, but again, with how inconsistent some of the East is right now, they will vary between a top 4 team and the 7th seed at the moment. But nice and consistent. They're certainly not sitting around where I thought they would be at times, which is play in or play out. Boston 2-1 on the week. They're now 11-9 overall, and they are well and truly in that jumble of mixed teams in the East. Sitting 8th, as I mentioned, a 2-1 record on the week. Jaylen Brown just continues to be Jaylen Brown. Again, a guy who I have in the top 10 of the MVP race so far this year. Definitely an all-star, definitely an all-NBA caliber player, and a guy that many people seem to have been underrating, but has consistently been an all-star and an all-NBA player for the better part of his career. This week, 31 points, 9.3 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 2.7 steals and a block on 5 turnovers, 41.6% from the field, 36.4% from deep, and 75% from the line. So high production, getting some wins, but the value of his possession certainly not as much as it would normally be, which certainly contributed to that loss there. But Boston right now, they've just started to find a couple of different avenues of guys who can score. Peyton Pritchard's had a bit more of a breakout. Anthony Simons, I still don't think has been used in the capacity that he should be. But you do have guys like a Walsh who are also stepping up, and they're trying to really prove themselves. You still have Derek White there, who's also trying to push the pace, but I don't know. Boston just still seem to be in that tricky position. You certainly can't rely on them to be an easy beat. There's no doubt about that. They are being really, really competitive. They are doing their absolute best. And the rumour is that Tatum is very, very, very much wanting to be involved around the All-Star break or after it. Whether it's going to be worth it to the team, I don't know. It could be something they explore, but the way they're playing right now, the inconsistency of the East, if they can just get a few runs on the board, a lot of consistent wins, or try and get some consistent wins, it'll make their journey throughout the East a hell of a lot easier heading into Christmas and certainly heading into January. Over to Brooklyn, who, again, remain 10 games under 500. There is not much to talk about a team that is not going to be in playoff contention this early in the season. A 1-2 weekly record, 4-16 overall. They are 13 out of a possible 15, and Noah Clowney was their best player this week in the 3 games that he played. 13.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. 46.2% from the field, 37.5 from deep, and 90.9 from the free throw line. Yeah, That pretty much summarises it there for Brooklyn. Not much going on, not much happening, no light at the end of the tunnel. They're going to wallow for a little bit now. Over to Charlotte, a 2-2 record for them. They are just keeping the not playing in the playoffs once again. Wolves at bay, 6-15. But I can't imagine we're too far away from that. 12th in the conference, and Miles Bridges was their best player this week, which says a lot when you consider the numbers that he put up and a lack of efficiency to go with them. 20.5 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.8 blocks on 1.8 turnovers, 44.9 from the field, 27.3 from deep, and 70% from the free throw line. The interesting one that around it at the moment is LaMelo Ball's come back. He's played a couple of games. He's racked up some stats. And then all of a sudden, great, he's awesome to go. People are back talking about LaMelo Ball. Miles Bridges, he turns up, and then he has a week like this. Knipple and Brandon Miller are the guys that you really want to be focusing on with this team. Miller has come back. He started to try and produce a little bit. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get into it. And again, Knipple, one of the leading contenders for Rookie of the Year. He's got to be top 3 at worst. Cooper Flagg has certainly stepped up and stepped out a fair bit after a rough week and a bit start, or a couple of weeks start. But yeah, Charlotte, again, they've just got to find a way to recruit. They've got to be able to get a name or two there to build around these young guys, to build some culture, because at the moment, again, it's the same old Charlotte we've seen for the better part of a decade. We're just going to do a little bit, then we're not going to do much at all, and people are going to talk us up, and we're not going to deliver, and then we'll sack a coach, and then we'll trade players, and then we'll go through a rebuilding process. Same old story for Charlotte. Over now to the Bulls, who have put themselves back into mediocrity once again, and it should come to the shock of nobody, because you're expecting a lot of consistency and high-level play out of guys who, now they've been paid, don't necessarily have a reason to prove it. And that's not necessarily saying that the guy on screen, Josh Giddey's doing that, but there are a lot of other people around him who want to get paid, who haven't been paid, have been told they're not going to get paid, so why would they give a damn? The Bulls 0-3 in the week, 9-11 overall, and they are now 10th in the conference. They're exactly where I thought they would be, and that's just wallowing around that playing tournament once again. They didn't make any great roster changes. They showed some signs at the end of last season, but they didn't improve much. And for some guys, they got older, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I know they've had injuries, and Kobe White's trying to work through it, but at the end of the day, if you're going to compete in this league, you've got to do something to really improve and drastically improve your chances. That hasn't happened. There's now conversations around Anthony Davis and getting him out of Dallas to get him to Chicago. But then if you're Chicago, who are you going to remove out of there that is going to be that worth? You're probably going to have to get rid of Kobe White. Again, he's not going to want to sign with Chicago unless they're paying money. And you get rid of Vucevic on an older expiring contract when you're Dallas and said you were going to compete. I don't know. There's some weird evidence at play there. For Giddey for the week, 21.3 points, 10.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 3.7 turnovers. 53.5 from the field, 44.4 from deep, 62.5 from the free throw line. He's trying to really produce at those expected numbers and the expected level that he got paid at, but he does need some people around him. Again, a 0-3 week. They're now 2 games below 500. This is a team that needs to be 5 above 500 in this East if they are going to be a top 6 chance. Based on the money they spent, they really should be. It's just not happening right now. Cleveland have a little bit of work to do. Certainly not the guy on screen. I mean, I think the guy on screen, he's been a top 5 player this season. He's been routinely a top 10 player for a number of years now. It's just now that the team's falling apart, he's not getting the same praise as he did when they were up there, and that's the unfortunate situation of a small market. The Cavs 1-2 on the week. They're 13-9 overall, currently sitting 6th, and again, one of the 2 teams I did expect to be in the conference finals in the East. And again, no thanks to the lack of effort from Donovan Mitchell, who clearly has been their best player this year. I've got him down as one of my top 5 MVP candidates so far this year, regardless of team record. And you look at a week like this when there's been a lot of passengers that haven't paid bus fare, and you can see why he deserves such a ranking. 34.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 4 turnovers. 53.5 from the field, 43.8 from deep, and 81.3 from the free throw line. Again, for Cleveland, they're wrestling with injury, they're wrestling with rotations, they're wrestling with form. They're not going out and playing that high-octane, high-level offense that they were last year. And again, it does come down to the fact you are missing some guys Darius Garland being injured doesn't help. Jared Allen being inconsistent doesn't help. You don't have Ty Jerome creating the spark like you did last year. You add to the fact that Evan Mobley just hasn't been where he was last year. There are some key factors. Whether that's enough to drastically swing this team from a 64-18 team where they've already lost half the games that they did last year is crazy. It's very hard to see, but because things are so different in the East right now, I can see why it has been a bit of an uphill battle. We'll see what Cleveland can do. But Donovan Mitchell certainly having a standout year. It'd be nice for a few people to pay bus fare to come along for the journey. Here's a guy that has been paying bus fare. He's made sure he's conducted some of the bus fare and in turn has seen the Pistons continue to ride. They had 2 losses this week, which when you've only had 2 to start the season, when you're 15-2 to move to 17-4, it does hit the ego a little bit. But maybe it's the week Detroit needed just to wake them up a little bit and go, hey, the East is wide open and you could fall victim if you're not careful. The Pistons still the number 1 seed, as I said, a 2-2 week to 17-4 overall. Cade Cunningham continues to dominate. Again, high turnover rates, which when we've seen Detroit lose in the past, it has been the inefficiency of their leader. And again, the buck stops with the leader, but at the end of the day, Cade's really trying to prove his point and improve things there. 32 points, 8.3 rebounds, 8 assists, 2.3 steals and 1.3 blocks on 6.5 turnovers. High usage rate, which you would expect a few turnovers, but certainly not nearly 7 a game. 50% from the field, 36% from deep, 81.8 from the free throw line. Detroit, they're just working through it. Again, I'd rather have a 2-2 week than go and have a 0-4 week. Or get towards the end of the season and get on a string of losses. You keep the 1 seed or you keep a top 2 seed, but you don't necessarily have a great run leading into the postseason, which costs you. Detroit, not a bad time to learn now. Get it out of the way. Get ready towards Christmas when the season really starts to pick up. And that's when you can really start to do things. Tobias Harris back into the squad as well, which really does help. You've got some of that senior leadership in. And again, you've got to be able to adjust your lineup when someone like a Harris comes in. He's not just a run-of-the-mill, plug-and-play guy. He's a guy that has had some senior responsibility in the past. He probably wants that again, but he understands that he's got to loosen the reins a bit. So once they adjust that lineup, I'm sure they'll be fine. To the Pacers, who have had their best week this season. They are still 13 games below 500, so they've got a lot of work to do, but had their best week this season. 2-2 overall, 4-17. Again, pretty sure their season's done, and I thought they might still be able to turn around at the start of the year and make the postseason. 14th in the conference. Pascal Siakam continues to plug away, and if he was doing this on a more well-known side that was struggling, people would, be screaming, get him out of there or get some pieces around him. It's just how the league works. 21.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.5 steals, and 0.8 blocks on a turnover. 51.4 from the field, 18.2 from deep, and 50% from the free throw line. Indiana are just in a rut. They're going to win some games here or there. They might pick up a little bit of form. Depends what the injuries look like. They might start to bounce back. They might get under a bit closer than 10 games or more below 500. But right now, they're not in contention. They're not going to be doing much. Which is quite the opposite for this team. A team that I said, hey, look, there is a real chance that they're a bottom 5 team. Well, they go and put a week together like this. 2-1 weekly record, 14-7 overall. They're third in the conference, and they had four absolute standout players. They're top 4 leaders, but when you look at overall game, when you look at efficiency, I thought Andrew Wiggins was their best player. 3 games played, 21.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, a steal and 1.7 blocks on less than 2 turnovers. Shot 57.5 from the field, 38.5 from deep, and close to 93% from the free throw line. Miami are really running in a system right now where there isn't an absolute lead on their offensive side of the ball, even though there is some potency there. Your Norman Powell's, Tyler Hero being back in the squad. Bam can pinch hit where you need to. Wiggins, obviously, a former All-Star himself as well. But it, again, is that defensive presence that comes with that, no saleable identity on the offensive end that's made them really, really good and will continue to make them really, really good. Have they overshot their mark early? I don't know. Third in the conference, just there seems to be something wrong about that. Now, when you consider the fact that people thought Bam was going to be the next KG, when you look at the fact that Tyler Hero flirted with an All-Star selection, a former 6th Man of the Year, Norman Powell flirted with an All-Star selection, has been a crucial rotation player on some teams. Andrew Wiggins, crucial rotation player, All-Star. He's been a champion. Maybe we have absolutely undersold this team because there is enough there if they put ego aside that they can get the job done and they can be competitive. But the general consensus with Miami has been that rugged star or that absolute out-and-out superstar or that rugged star who gets the job done. It's not heavily defined with Miami right now, But when you look on reflection at how much experience they've got in this team, there's no wonder they're getting it done. They're selfless, they're sacrificing. Oh, and they've got, in my opinion, the best coach in the league in Eric Spoelstra. So something was always going to happen. I'm interested to see how Miami hold out for the year, but again, after a solid week like that, still sitting top 3 in a really touchy East, they're having a really solid year. Here's a team that was having a solid year, but things they're not necessarily going the best for them. Now, they're going to start to bounce a little bit and move a little bit because their best player has returned from injury. But the Milwaukee Bucks are still floundering. They're now sitting 4 games below 500, which makes their task even more impossible. You thought Chicago's was going to be tough stringing wins together. You've got to imagine the Bucks are going to have to get on a big bicycle and ride, or Giannis is going to have to continue to average around 30, 12, and 6. As I mentioned, a 1-3 record. They're now 9-13, 11 in the conference. They're sitting outside the play-in tournament. And the guy who played all 4 games this week, AJ Green, again, a guy who has also put in some tremendous minutes this year, has proven to be a viable shooter, a genuine third option on his night. Did it again this week. Now, again, he was the best scorer who played 4 games. I'm not giving that discredit. I'm just saying that in an ideal world, if this is what you're getting out of a third and fourth option from an efficiency standpoint, a production standpoint, helping your second unit, you're looking like a better team. 14.5 points a game, 4.5 rebounds a game, 4.8 assists, 1 steal and 1.3 turnovers. Epically efficient from the field, 61.3% from both the field and from beyond the arc, shooting 100% from the stripe. So when he gets the ball, he is effective, he is efficient. But you've got to be careful with guys like this, because the last thing you want to do is overfeed them, become over-reliant, and then kill any momentum or hurt their effectiveness within the team, because then they get scouted, all of that sort of stuff that just takes them right out of the game. I want to see what they look like with Giannis over the next couple of weeks as he bounces back and as they look at a team. Again, Giannis would be a top 10 contender in my MVP race if they weren't outside the playoff window. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do if they can bounce back in the next couple of weeks. Drag this back to 500, they've got a bit of a base. If they don't do that, then your alarm bells start ringing, not only for their success this year, but for Giannis' future. Over to the Knicks, who secured a pretty big win this week, knocked Toronto out of second place and moved into second themselves. They're 3-0 on the week, they're 13-6 on the season. They were one of the picks for me to come out of the East, along with Cleveland. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can regain some composure, whether they can continue to build what they've got now, and whether they've managed to work through not only some coaching adjustments, but some clear rotations, some injuries, some lineup changes, and of course a little bit of a handing back of the baton to this guy here. Jalen Brunson, big week, 29.3 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.3 steals on 2.7 turnovers, 47.1 from deep, 47.1 from the field, 38.9 from deep, and 85% from the free throw line. The Knicks were always going to have some teething, change of coach, which in turn is going to change your play style, which in turn is going to impact your leadership and who's getting getting possessions and having an impact. It happened with the Knicks, but they've managed to bounce back on it. Part of it as well is the fact that, along with the fact that Jalen Brunson's now being given the microphone, so to speak, to be the lead singer, but getting guys like Josh Hart consistently involved, getting guys like Mikal Bridges consistently involved, because they're expanding upon team concepts while still having a really impactful leader, they're going to have success. New York has always had a star at some point, but it depends what kind of star you've had to the level of success. You have an out-and-out baller that's glitz and glamour like Carmelo Anthony, you don't have a great run of success. But if you have a star like a Ewing, you see conference finals, you see NBA finals. Brunson, perfect example. Clyde Frazier, Willis Reed, perfect examples. This is the kind of identity that the Knicks have taken on while playing a more up-tempo style of basketball. I'm really liking it. Let's see what the next couple of weeks can bring too. Do the Pistons come back to the pack? Do a couple of other people spring out? Who knows, but I don't mind this by the Knicks. Speaking of teams that have managed to bounce back, 3-0 weekly record, 13-8 overall. They are now 5 games above 500, and they are now back sitting in the top 5 of the East, potentially looking to crack top 4 depending on form. That is the Orlando Magic. Desmond Bane with a really nice week in the 3 games that he played. 22.5 points, 7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.5 steals and 0.3 blocks and 1.3 turnovers. Better than 50% from the field at 50.8, 33.3% from deep and 83.9 from the free throw line. I said Orlando weren't going to stay down for long. They're a 500 team. It's just that simple. Outside of the 5-20 to start the first 25 games of Paolo Banchero's career, and I will repeat this until people start actually wake up and realise, they have consistently been a 500 team. Which means that they're going to be a trouble for the opposition, not only when they're at home, but when they're on the road. And that's what's been happening there. Paolo Banchero is still out, but Franz Wagner is continuing to step up. I kind of liken Jalen Johnson's run to start this season to that of Franz Wagner last year. Granted, Orlando were a little higher in the seedings and probably had a little bit of deeper roster as far as the bench was concerned. But it's the same sort of year that he's having by comparison. Bain's now found his groove and really started to click with this Orlando team. It was just a matter of time. But now that we've got, 25% of the season out of the way, some of the chemistry issues have likely been ironed out. This is really going to be a good opportunity for Orlando to capitalise on. How other teams deal with this, I don't know. But you would have to imagine for Orlando that this is a real green light moment for them. To the 76ers, a 1-2 weekly record for them. They're now 10-9, and they have actually dropped out of the general play-in picture. They are a playoff picture. They're in the play-in picture. The general playoff picture has changed for them. 9th in the conference. Tyrese Maxey. I mean, what else can you say? Here's a guy who has been as fit a player as there is. He gets up and down the floor quicker than anybody else. He's been as potent an offensive player as far as getting shots up as any player this year. And he just continues to bring it. Some of his efficiencies down this week, but overall still having a nice contribution. 28.7 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 2.7 turnovers. 45.2 from the field and 19.2 from deep. They are clearly down on season averages. 86.2 from the free throw line. He's getting there. But Philadelphia now are just starting to run into some concerns as a team that's about to slip to 500, a team that's outside their top 8, and a team that's next best lineup contains veterans who can barely move, or if they do move, they don't react the same way. They certainly have the smarts, and to a certain extent have the skills, but they just don't have the smarts to be able to get the job done anymore. And that's really the concern there. Do they try and burn Maxey out? I don't know. VJ Edgecombe's had a bit of a slump. Granted, he did start off as hot as any rookie ever in his opening game, so that's quite a high standard to live up to. But at the same time, if you're Philadelphia, you've got to understand that standard needs to be met. Joel Embiid, he's looking slower. He's not reacting the same. Paul George, I mean, he's now officially the second option on the second. He's almost the second option on the second unit, which is really sad. But at the end of the day, that's Philadelphia. That's the position they're in. We'll see how it continues to play out. But Philadelphia are just starting to cut back to the pack as we thought they may have earlier in the year. Over to Toronto, and we are featuring the Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Year for the month of November. Scotty Barnes having a really big impact there, and a huge impact obviously with Toronto. They only went 1-2 this week, but they are still 14-7 overall, which is a better start than a lot of people thought. They might be a little top heavy, but they have some really good experience in that top half, and they are 4th now in the East. They were as high as 2nd, but they have dropped to 4th. Again, competitive outfits there with New York, with Miami. Of course, it's tough with Detroit at the moment. You then have someone like Orlando who are starting to bring things up as well. But Barnes, a really nice week. 24 points, 9 rebounds, 4.5 assists, or 4.3 assists in fact, 1 steal, and 1.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. As efficient a scorer as any forward in the league. 51.1 from the field, 50% from deep, 95.5 from the free throw line. He's got plenty of all-star level talent. The Brandon Ingram, someone like Emmanuel Quickly's had a really good year. But Barnes himself, he has been the pace setter there. He's been an all-star before. For me, he was a Rookie of the Year. He then won that award. Had a really nice year last year. He's been rewarded, as I mentioned, with an all-star prior. The guy is a genuine star of the league. He's a genuine basketballer. But he has the same issue that a lot of people have right now, and that he's just playing in a small market. But now that he's got some pieces around him and the team's starting to pick up, there's a little bit of recognition going to them because, we didn't talk about Toronto and they made a move, and now that guy who moved there, he is making numbers, so therefore it must be his fault. No, I would still be squarely putting all the blame of success for Toronto right now with Barnes. He is that next generation. You know, it was Barnes, it was Siakam, it was a little bit of Kawhi, it was DeRozan, Lowry, you know, that sort of transitional period, that period there for what the Raptors were. But no, it's nice to see him playing well. Nice to see the Raptors playing well. They've just got to remain consistent. And consistent isn't a word that we'd use with the worst team in the East. The Washington Wizards, 2-1 weekly record, their best record for the season, keeping in mind that they were 1-15 heading into the week. 3-16, oh hell yeah, for the overall record, but they are dead last. CJ McCollum had a nice sporty piece there. He's been competitive and getting everyone on board. 28.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.7 steals on 0.7 turnovers, 55.9 from the field, 51.7 from deep, and 57.1 from the free throw line. Statistically, yes, he would have been better just going and shooting from outside every chance he got, but that's not how the game's played. The Wizards are done. It's whether they do anything with McCollum from this point forward. Moving over to the East, and we start with the Dallas Mavericks, and the concern that I had with Dallas was that they were probably a week or two away from genuinely being under 500 and being a real concern, but things have turned pretty quickly. Cooper Flagg being a major factor in that, but the return of Anthony Davis, adding a bit more defensive firepower, certainly you would have to suggest is going to improve, especially, you know, when the best power forward of the last decade returns to the game. You probably, you know, there has to be a factor in that somewhere along the line. A 2-1 record for the Mavs for the week. They're now 7-15 overall, so they're still teetering, but I would say that they're turning a bit of a corner with some injury returns. 12th in the conference. Cooper Flagg, their best player though through those 3 games. 24 points, 7.7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. That's pretty good numbers for a guy in his first season. 53.8 from the field, 22.2 from deep, and 84.5 from the free throw line. Dallas's fortunes will essentially favour the Brave here. If they choose to be competitive and try and make a run at it and get it back to 500, then all of a sudden adding Kyrie back into this team makes them a bit more of a playoff contender, makes them a little bit more palatable. But a couple of more genuine injuries to some stars and a couple of bad weeks worth of losses, and you're chasing from, 10 games back. It's a long way. 8 games back is still a long way, but 10 games back is a very long way. Seldom anywhere in sports will you find a team 5 below 500 that recovers, let alone a 10 below 500, especially in an extended season like this in the NBA. So we'll see what Dallas can do. We'll see if they can find a bit of their identity, but if there is a positive to take out of it. Cooper Flagg, he's gotten over those first couple of weeks. He's going to be fine in this league. Over to Denver, who have had a bit of a slump, who have seen, with Aaron Gordon going out, Christian Brown being injured, they've had some defensive concerns, which means that there hasn't been necessarily a focus on that hugely all-time offense that they're trying to run, which in turn has seen a slump in their form because it sometimes holds people accountable who aren't the greatest defenders. And that is certainly the kink in the armour of Jokic, particularly when it comes to an all-time argument. And with him needing to overcommit more defensively this couple of weeks or so, it's hurt him offensively. And with it hurting him offensively, it's hurt Denver. A 1-2 weekly record. They're still 14-6 and still top 4 in the conference. But, this is a team that, on their day is clearly the second best team in the competition. Jokic in his 3 games, though, still epically efficient. 25.3 points, 12.7 rebounds, 11 assists, 0.7 steals, and a block a game on 3.7 turnovers. So you can't question that. 58.5 from the field, 46.2 from deep, and 84.6 from the free throw line. He's having a season of 60, 40, 80. He'll be the only member of that club if he keeps it up. But you do just have to factor in what these injuries are potentially going to be doing for this team. I'd like to see them improve a little bit more on that side of the ball, and that means that your Cam Johnsons are now going to have someone like a Cam Johnson is going to have to step up. Someone like a Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to have to step up. Jamal Murray can't afford to have a lapse. Because Jokic is going to do this. Jokic's worst week is going to be 25, 10, and 10. You now just need to be able to adapt to it as a team. They're still top 4. There's nothing to stress about. They're still going to be a major player at the end of the year. But it's interesting what 1 or 2 key rotations can do to a side that still is reasonably top-heavy when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. Speaking of teams that are top-heavy, the Golden State Warriors only played the 2 games, 1-1 across those 2. They now sit 11-10 and they're 8th in the conference. You've got guys that are struggling to shoot the three ball, guys that are injured and not on the floor, and other guys that don't play well when others are injured and off the floor. Jimmy Butler, they're talking about him going to greener pastures, and hey, things have changed there in Golden State, but there's just a couple of things that you need to factor in there with Jimmy Butler, and we'll get to that in a second. Real nice 2 games for him, 22.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, a steal and a turnover per game. Reasonably efficient at 50% from the field, making a third of his threes and 81% from the line. The thing you've got to factor in with Jimmy is 2 things. Number one, he doesn't like situations where guys whinge and moan and won't compete and won't get after it. Something tells me that there are probably a couple of people that were playing in Miami that were doing that in the end, along with the fact that he just wasn't in good form himself. But stockpiling on a guy who can get it done when he's out there is a bit tough compared to guys that don't necessarily like the bright lights. And number 2, he's playing next to the greatest shooter that's ever lived. His offensive game's opening up at an older age, allowing him to still produce. He's not going to whinge that much about it. He's going to have his concerns, but he's not going to whinge about it too much. For Golden State, this is where, again, it's a perfect time and a perfect example. Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, get them moving. Brandon Przemski, give them possessions, get them involved, build them up. Butler's not afraid to do that if he knows they're going to compete and be there. If they are afraid to do that, then you've got the wrong guys. I think Golden State will be fine, but you've just got to err on the side of caution when you're only at 500. To Houston, who don't need to err on the side of caution because they're a top 3 team consistently, a top 3 team in the West. I would actually have them slightly above the Lakers despite the fact of what standings and seedings are saying, just because of their level of consistency and their commitment to the defensive side of the ball. 2-1 weekly record, they're 13-5 overall, and Şengün with a really nice week. 24.7 points, 6 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. Shot 55.8 from the field, 12.3 from deep. That is not ideal, and neither is 68.2 from the free throw line. But here's a guy that is benefiting tremendously thanks to Kevin Durant. For the simple fact that you're not going to throw a double at Şengün, so he's got that license to go to work himself. If you do throw a double, he's a very good passing big, and he's part of that brigade that is just racking up offensive rebounds as the season goes along. How this continues to work out, I don't know, because there's clearly got to be something at some stage where they say, hey, look, so we need you to make a decision. We need you to really lock in as his second option. Are you trying to take the first mantle? I don't know. It's okay for some lower teams because you're still trying to establish who your number 1 guy is. But right now for Houston, you've taken a couple of seasons to get where you're at. You broke 500 when Şengün went out injured in 23-24, and you pretty much overplayed a little bit. Last year you get to the playoffs after a bit of a run. Now you've made the playoffs. You've still got most of your core intact. You need to do something about it. But the key right now is Şengün has been pushing for that number 1 spot. Clearly isn't the number 1 man at the moment. Is that going to have a ripple effect? We'll see what happens exactly. I don't mind the topsy-turvy, but sooner rather than later, I just think Houston need to work it out. Another quick one here, really short and simple. The Los Angeles Clippers. 0-4 week. They're officially, for me, out of playoff contention, and they don't have any of their own draft picks for this foreseeable future, and some of them belong to OKC, who, at this point, are struggling to look like they're going to lose another game. Now, it's clearly a bit of hyperbole, but you get my drift. Kawhi Leonard, their best player this week, 31 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.8 turnovers. 50-40-90 splits as he does when he has these epically efficient offensive weeks. 54.4 from the field, 45.5 from deep, and 96.6 from the free throw line. But they're well and truly beyond reprehension at this point. What do you do with James Harden when he's putting up these kind of numbers? Do you move him on? Do you try and keep him? Kawhi Leonard, can you be consistent enough to keep him? Is there enough value in him as a trade stock knowing he's not going to play a lot of games? I don't know. What I do know is the Clippers are done. They're cooked. That's the end of their season. And from the Clippers with their season done to the Lakers, who are 15-5, 3-1 this week, and they sit second only to Oklahoma City in the Western Conference. Luka, another big week, continues to show why, at worst, he is one of the 3 best players this season. 37.5 points, 9.3 rebounds, 9 assists. A rounded 38, 9, and 9 for the week. It's like a rounded 35, 9, and 9 for the season. So he's barely outperformed himself. He's made one more 3-point shot. 0.5 steals, 0.8 blocks, 4.5 turnovers. I still think that he's a turnstile of a defender, but they do hide it really well with an offense that is so Luka-centric. 51.1 from the field, 43.9 from deep, 87.8 from the free throw line. Thing with the Lakers, as I mentioned before, you've taken someone like an Austin Reeves who was clearly growing, who was developing, to now look like an all-star. You've got DeAndre Ayton on your team, who is clearly well and truly beyond what he was at any point in Phoenix and certainly in Portland, because he's getting possessions. And he's taken the mantle off LeBron James as the best player of the Lakers. LeBron is officially at best the second option on that team. He's doing all of this, and the Lakers are still producing. The Lakers are still winning. Now, I think there needs to be some efficiency looked at overall. I think Luka could be a 50, 40, 85 guy. That's realistically the way that it's at. But he does so much to get everyone else involved offensively that you can't necessarily try and nitpick the efficiency side of the ball. But he's having a really good year. The Lakers, they are consistently a top 4 team. They're sitting at second. I think they're a top 4 team. They're looking like a conference semi-finalist at the moment. But just one thing about them. Don't know what it is. Just don't see him getting over the hump of the title. But a really nice start. A really good week from Luka. The Lakers are flying. Speaking of teams flying this week, the Memphis Grizzlies, undefeated on the week, could have been a lot worse. They would have been 6-15 if that record had been switched the other way. And we're having a completely different conversation. Instead, they've decided to put up and shut up, and they are going to try and make a push to turn this thing around. Zach Edey, a monster week on both sides of the ball. 19.3 points, 17 rebounds a game to go with 3.3 blocks. Also the 0.7 assists and 0.3 steals. But if you're worried about his production in that sense when you win 3-0 and get it done defensively, I'm not saying you've got rocks in your head, but there's plenty of cobblestones that might try and make an application for a rental. 2.7 turnovers, 71.8% from the field. Hugely efficient there, 1 of 2 from the free throw line. Spoke about it last week. They need to put up, they need to shut up, they need to make a decision. And that's ultimately what they've done. They've tried to knuckle down. They're looking to get a result. They're looking to get the job done. How they are going to continue to maintain it, I don't know. Ja Morant a clear factor in that. Jaren Jackson Jr. clearly a factor in that there. But there's nothing at the moment that's really overwhelming me about Memphis that makes me go, yes, they're going to turn it on. Or, yes, they're going to hold on to the top 8 spot. Because I can't guarantee it. It could be 2 bad weeks and they're done. That's just the level that we're operating at there. But they've had a really nice week. Zach Edey with a really nice week, breaking out from what I thought should have been an All-NBA second team nod last year. He had a really nice year, but I thought it should have been an All-NBA second team. But he's taking steps in his game in turn. Memphis are trying to ride that bad wagon. We'll see what happens. But a nice week for Memphis to try and put a fork in the road as far as their season is concerned. Next up is Minnesota, and they are still sitting above 500. They're just quietly going about their business, and Anthony Edwards is trying to lift himself once again. A 2-1 record on the week, moving them to 12-8, 6th in the conference. And as I mentioned, Edwards having a really nice week. 34 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 0.3 blocks a game. 55.7 from the field, 51.9 from deep, and 81% from the free throw line. Again, missing the Gilgeous-Alexander Walker out of this has certainly hit them a little bit, but they're now starting to experiment with some of their lineups as far as when they're going to start, who they're going to start and finish with at centre. Rudy Gobert finding a little bit more time on the pine, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but when you look at the result of the game and the way that what they're looking to get out of their rotations, I mean, it's known that Rudy Gobert is not necessarily the greatest offensive player. So when you've got someone like a Naz Reid on there, former 6th man of the year, who can clearly produce offensively, you know, it's not a bad idea. Particularly can run a smaller front line with Julius Randle as well. That's also been a key. Randle has been stepping up where he needs to. We've covered that plenty as well. But it's just going to be interesting to see what Chris Finch does with this lineup as they continue to go through. Rudy Gobert, again, continuing to be a really elite rim protector this year. But he is getting older. Big guys at his size age poorly. So the last thing you need is for him to be an offensive liability. But I like what Minnesota are doing. I don't know whether they're the team that can capitalise on a late run once again. You've got to think this is a back-to-back Western Conference Finals team, but they're just missing something to get over that hump. I don't know what it is, but they are just missing it. Speaking of teams that are missing it, here's just the miss of it. Really simple stuff. This is it's a miss. It's a clear miss. New Orleans 0-3. They're 15 games off 500. They're 3-18. 15th overall in the conference. Sadiq Bey played 3 games. 20.3 points, 9.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 0.7 turnovers. 51.2 from the field, 45% from deep, 66.7 from the free throw line. They're the worst team in the league. And if they're not, they're certainly in contention with Washington. They are a poor side. And by comparison, we'll go to the other side. The best team in the league, and on pace to be one of the greatest single-season teams in the history of sports. Oklahoma City 3-0 on the week, 2-1 overall on the season, first in the conference, and my MVP leader, in my opinion, and running away really, really quickly with it, Gilgeous-Alexander. In the 3 games played, 34.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.7 steals on 1.7 turnovers. This is a guy, they're getting that far out in front, he's not playing in the 4th. So again, 34, 4, and 6. A rounded 2 steals on less than 2 turnovers, shooting 55.6 from the field, 40% from deep, 84.8 from the free throw line. Williams is back into the lineup. Chet Holmgren's playing well. Good luck to the rest of the league. Good luck. A team that's not needing luck, but a team that has just managed to find their groove has been the Phoenix Suns. 7th overall, 13-9 on the season, 2-2 weekly record, and they're just finding guys that are getting the job done. I've highlighted Dillon Brooks previously, but I want to highlight Colin Gillespie as well. This week for me, they're consistent standout, they're efficient player, 21.3 points, 2.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.8 turnovers, 50.8% from the field, 52.4% from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Grayson Allen has usually, for the last couple of seasons, been their relied upon guy to do this sort of thing. If they've unveiled him and Colin Gillespie to be complementary to the two, the combo guard nature of Devin Booker right now, to the defensive intensity and culture setting of a Dillon Brooks, Phoenix is sitting okay. And while they might not have any draft picks, they have actually come out of this in a win-win situation with Houston in regards to getting rid of Kevin Durant, and certainly ahead of the Clippers in relation to getting rid of Bradley Beal. This is a team that, anyone that's below them from a playing standpoint, I would rank them against. They're probably a first-round team. They've got ball movement out of their bigs. What's needing to happen here for people to start realising, hey, Phoenix are all right. They're not going to light the world on fire. I'm not expecting them to, but Devin Booker's having an MVP level season, like a top 10 MVP level season, an All-NBA season, if you will. Dillon Brooks is proving people wrong. And then you've got someone like Colin Gillespie that's plugging gaps. That's a nice mix there for Phoenix. A really nice mix. Portland are somewhat having their moments at the moment. 0-2 week, 8-12 now overall, and they're 10th in the conference. So flirting around that, getting out of that play-in tournament area. And I thought they would be potentially a bottom 5 team if things weren't clicking. But a guy here that definitely has been clicking, and if he was doing this on a different team, they would be lighting up about this sensation that is being unveiled and just growing in the league and has been for a couple of years now. Denny Avdia, 34 points, 12.5 rebounds, 9 assists a game this week across those 2 games. 0.5 steals, 0.5 blocks on 3.5 turnovers. Shot 54.5 from the field, 41.7 from deep, and 73% from the free throw line. Here's a guy who had 30, 19, and 10 and lost in a game. That's the kind of production you're getting out of the guy. Now, it's not the narrative people want, because we want to talk about Drew Holiday, we want to talk about Shaedon Sharp, Scoot Henderson, guys like that, really getting a look in, really developing their game. But the guy who's been leading this team this year has clearly been Denny Avdia. And from a numbers standpoint, if you were just going to go blanket look at your all-star selections based on numbers, this guy's in. Ultimately, as people have seen if you go and watch my MVP video, I have to make judgments based on team winning, being in a playoff position, you contributing to those wins, not really being talked about in trades, being eligible to play all your games. As far as ticking 3 of those 4 boxes, when he plays well and they get the win, generally he's the best player on the floor. He's putting up numbers. He's not in trade talks. they're just not in contention in the playoffs at the moment. They're in the playing tournament, they're not in the playoff picture. So it'll be interesting to see how Portland continue to go throughout this year, but Avdia having a hell of a year, and again, hell of a week for the big man. Here's Sacramento, a team that has officially ruled themselves out of playoff contention, so we'll only be brief here. 5-16 record, 13th in the conference. Keegan Murray back into the lineup. Yes, that's right. At one point, Sacramento could have had a lineup with a six-man of Dennis Schroeder, Russell Westbrook, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis, and again, Malik Monk on this team as well. And they're currently 5-16. Keeping in mind, they also at one point had De'Aaron Fox on this team, and at one point gave away Tyrese Halliburton. I know he was a part of the Sabonis deal, but just a bit of perspective there for everybody. Murray with a really nice week himself. 18 points, 6.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 3.3 steals, and 2 blocks. Like, he was really good on the week. The team just sucked. 45.7 from the field, 15.8 from deep, 75% from the free throw line. This experiment is well and truly over. This is sultanas in lemonade. This is water and oil. This is bicarbonate vinegar. It's done. It's gone. It was a quick reaction, and it's really fizzed in the end. So, you would have to say the Kings are done. Nice week from Keegan Murray, but yeah, Kings are done. 2 more teams to go, one of them being the Spurs, and while they are currently suffering through some injuries, Dylan Harper has returned. Stephen Castle isn't too far away, and you would have to think we're probably only a couple of weeks, depending on the severity of the calf strain of Victor Wembanyama. And they're still holding up, and a big part of that is because of De'Aaron Fox. 2-1 weekly record for the Spurs. They're now 13-6, still sitting top 6 in the West. Funnily enough, I still have Wemby sitting in my top 10 of my MVP votes. I'd have him as high as 6th, to be honest with you. De'Aaron Fox is a guy who's probably going to really start considering himself up there for All-Star selection if he keeps playing the way he's playing. A nice week, 25.7 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 3 turnovers. 45.8 from the field, 33.3 from deep, 94.4 from the free throw line. The trick that we've got up our sleeve now with San Antonio is there are a couple of guys who have been stars who have played well on other teams, or have had the opportunity to, be a bit of a focus of the offense, and now they've got a bit more depth. The Spurs can utilise that. So someone like a Devin Vassell, who, on bad Spurs teams was able to take a lead. He's got a little bit of backing now, so he needs to sort of run out in front. He can do that. Harrison Barnes, we're about 10 years removed from that, but he's a veteran. He's a wily veteran who can get things done. Clearly, De'Aaron Fox is another guy who can get that moving. Soham, when he can lock in a little bit if he's about, isn't too bad. I wouldn't be relying on him, but again, there's a rotational piece. Dylan Harper's back, and you're still waiting on someone like Victor Wembanyama to return. You're still waiting on someone like Castle to return. The Spurs can stay steady. They will be fine. It's just a matter of managing it from here. And our final team of the week, the Utah Jazz, who are in a really funny position here because they're no more than 5 or 6 games below 500. On any given night, they look like a team that could break 500, get into a playing tournament, and cause some issues if you're not careful. But then on any other given night, you just wonder when they're going to try and blow it up. Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen, they have been combining well. I had Markkanen as their best player this week. 25 points, 7.7 rebounds, an assist, 0.3 steals, and 0.7 turnovers to go with 44.2 from the field, 23.8 from deep, 92.3 from the free throw line. Again, they're sitting 11th in the conference, so they're sort of flirting with that Portland situation there. They're 2-1 on the week, 7-13 overall. But they, again, to me, it's just a lack of consistency at the moment. Keontae George, as I said, one of the best open floor players in the league. I mean, you can make a real case that beyond Tyrese Maxey, from a guard standpoint, he might be it. That's the kind of operation that he provides. But on the other side of things, he then has weeks or he has games where he's not reliable. You can't trust him with possession of the basketball. Someone like a Markkanen, yeah, okay, he's clearly shown that he can be an all-star level player. He can be a most improved player. He can be an all-NBA level player when he puts his heart and soul into it. But on a team that's not going to give you any just reward for your effort, why would you? So those sort of questions get asked of Markkanen as well. Don't know what the Jazz are doing. I kind of like it, kind of don't like it, but they need to hurry up and make a decision. They either need to do a Dallas and they need to commit and they need to try and play hard, or you start bottoming out. You look at the couple of young guys you've got. Can you utilise them? Sure. Get rid of a major piece. Try and bring some picks in. Maybe bring in a key veteran to try and re-establish something where you can. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That has been my review for Week 6 of the 25-26 NBA season. Let me know what you think, who have been the good performers, who's sort of been underwhelming, who are the teams that need to throw the babies out with the bathwater, throw all the toys out of the cot, or who needs to jump in and swim like hell to the finish line. It's going to be a really interesting month of December. As I said, my MVP video for till November is up. Go and check that out. Check out the criteria that most of you will already know. Check out the honorable mentions, and of course check out the top 10. Let me know what you think of that there. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.